They didn't fire me, they rebranded me, said I was misaligned with current momentum. After 24 years, they couldn't even use the word obsolete. Just sat there in that glass box they called a conference room, tossing buzzwords like grenades, waiting for one to stick. Too traditional for a fast-paced economy, the CEO said, as if I hadn't carried this company through 3 recessions and a hostile takeover. That's how it ends these days. Not with a scandal, not with a handshake, just a PowerPoint slide with your name under restructure opportunities. My name is Alan Kessler. I'm 57 years old, or as they politely framed it in my exit paperwork, approaching sunset career stages. I was the Senior Vice President of Strategic Development at Hallworth & Gray, a firm I helped grow from a rented WeWork cubicle into a billion-dollar machine. My title sounded fancy, but really I was the mechanic under the hood, the guy who knew which gears to oil, which belts were about to snap. I made things run, until they decided they wanted a driver with a social media license and a ring light. They replaced me with a 26-year-old named Chase. Chase, with the painted-on confidence of someone who's never been punched in the face by a quarterly report. He's got a master's from Stanford and 400,000 followers on TikTok, where he does motivational dances about synergizing client matrices. I watched his onboarding video. He called our legacy clients the quiet problem. I was one of the men who brought those clients in. The meeting was short, clinical. The CEO, Evan Rydell, delivered the decision with the kind of detached warmth you reserve for putting down a beloved dog. He used to call me AK, said I was his compass. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I nodded. Then I asked if I could pack my things that afternoon, quietly. He said yes. Relief flickered behind his polished smile. I walked back to my office, closed the door, and sat in the chair I'd bought myself the year I made partner. Italian leather, worn smooth at the elbows. I stared at my bookshelf. Not the awards, not the plaques, but the hardbound notebooks I'd filled with sketches, systems, forecasts, years of thought. No one would touch them. They wouldn't even know what they were looking at. I packed slowly, a framed photo of my wife and I from the company's first gala, a brass pen I'd been given on my 10-year anniversary, the copy of Good to Great. I'd annotated so heavily, it looked like a student's Bible. I took the notebooks, every single one. Outside my office, no one said a word. A few glanced up, then back down. Not in cruelty, in fear. I was the third exec to be modernized that quarter. They were playing career musical chairs, and the music had started again. I reached the elevator, box in arms, pressed the button. No one followed, no one stopped me. The doors closed. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, still standing tall, still me. At home, the house was quiet. My wife was at work, my daughter grown, off living her own life in Chicago. I carried the box to my study and set it on the desk. Then, I walked to the cabinet where I kept the bottle of Glenlivet I'd bought the day we closed the Series C round, our biggest ever. I'd been saving it for the IPO, a celebration that would never come. I poured a glass, sat in the leather armchair by the window, and I let the silence stretch out. But I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I listened. I listened to the echo of what they didn't say, the cowardice in their silence, the worship of novelty over experience, the way they feared irrelevance so much, they confused age with obsolescence. I opened my laptop, not out of habit, out of curiosity. I watched Chase's welcome video again, then his YouTube keynote, then the agency reels he cited. I watched until I understood what they were selling, not substance, not structure, just velocity, sparkle, surface. I read, studied, listened to every podcast the board shared in Slack, the ones they thought I ignored. I let their buzzwords ferment, and somewhere around 2 a.m, I realized I didn't feel lost. I felt unshackled. They thought they buried me under a tombstone of hashtags and cloud decks, but I wasn't dead. I wasn't even asleep. I had been loyal, methodical, deliberate. That's not weakness, that's design. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to disappear. I wasn't going to rant online or sue for wrongful termination. I was going to do what they never expected. I was going to rebuild. Because if they thought I was done, they never understood what I built. The silence after a career ends isn't loud. It's surgical, a clean cut. No scream, no blood. Just absence. The kind that hums in the background while your hands keep moving out of reflex, opening emails that no longer arrive, checking calendars that no longer matter. So I turned the spare bedroom into an office, stripped it to the essentials: desk, chair lamp, notebooks. The laptop I bought myself on the day Hallworth and Gray hit its first billion in managed assets. I didn't bring any awards in here, no nostalgia, just work. I didn't start with bitterness. I started with facts. I opened my journals, 24 years of handwritten notes, diagrams, observations. I flipped through pages like an archaeologist unearthing his own forgotten blueprint. Forecast models I had built from scratch, crisis playbooks, account growth patterns. I knew which clients brought seasonal volatility, which ones were built for recession, which ones needed hand-holding every quarter. Hallworth and Gray may have taken my title, but they were still using my playbook. I just hadn't named it yet. I started the ledger 3 days after the exit, a private spreadsheet, no headers, no branding, just initials and timelines. Clients I'd worked with, ones I'd brought in, ones I'd helped rescue after Q3 nosedives. I checked LinkedIn updates, earnings calls, press releases. One by one, I marked down who had left and when. By the end of the week, there were 17 names on the ledger. 6 had dropped the firm, 5 had downgraded, 3 had moved to boutique advisories, 3 were still listed, but their quarterly performance was slipping. I reached out to no one, not yet. Instead, I started listening. Quietly. I knew who still respected discretion. Old colleagues. A former vice president of client experience now taking a sabbatical after her department was dissolved. A junior analyst I used to mentor, now working overtime patching holes the new leadership didn't see. They all spoke in code, careful, like people in a collapsing house, not sure which walls were load-bearing. What I heard didn't surprise me. The new head of digital innovation, Chase, had introduced experience-forward protocols. Client deliverables were sent via interactive PDFs with embedded music and emojis. Presentations began with GIFs. Quarterly updates were now narrated over stock footage. The clients weren't laughing. One of my old contacts, CFO of a mid-market logistics firm, put it bluntly. We hired Hallworth for strategy, not interpretive dance. He didn't know I'd left. When I told him, he paused, then said, "Makes sense. That explains a lot." He became my first client. I didn't advertise, didn't build a website, just structured a clean one-page agreement and offered a month-to-month consulting model. I reviewed his existing partnership with Hallworth, dissected it, found the inefficiencies, and built a parallel structure that gave him more for less. No slides, no flair, just clarity. Word spread quietly. A second client came in, then a third. All referrals, all people I'd worked with before. I didn't promise miracles, I just delivered the things that used to be standard. Meanwhile, I kept building the ledger. Every new client added a thread, a pattern. I watched as Hallworth's quarterly numbers stagnated, not tanked, just stalled, like an engine still humming but slowly leaking oil. Chase, on the other hand, was thriving online. His LinkedIn was a shrine to disruption. He posted selfies at team happy hours, TED-style quotes in Helvetica over black and white portraits, clips from internal creativity jams. To the outside world, he looked like a visionary. But behind the curtain, they were slipping. The irony didn't escape me. They'd cut me loose in search of relevance. But relevance doesn't hold the roof up when the storm hits. Stability does. My days became methodical. Morning coffee, ledger updates, 2 to 3 client calls, project briefs, strategy decks. I wasn't moving fast, I was moving right. And unlike my old office, where decision-making had turned into performance art, here there was no applause, just results. I watched the transformation unfold like time-lapse photography. Each client who left Hallworth added weight to the ledger. It wasn't a list anymore, it was a pulse. Proof of what I already knew. They didn't just lose a man, they lost their anchor. And I didn't need to burn them down to prove it. I just needed to keep building. One night, after wrapping up a long review session with a manufacturing firm in Detroit, I leaned back in my chair and looked at the wall. There was nothing there. No degrees, no motivational slogans. Just a clean white surface. That's when the phrase came to me. Not a mission, a reminder. I wasn't chasing relevance. I was defining stability. The invitation came on cream-colored stationery, hand-signed in ink, no subject line, just a time, a date, and the name of a private club uptown that didn't list itself online. No logos, no PR campaigns, just whispered memberships and quiet deals sealed over scotch. I knew it before I opened the envelope. Gregory Alton. Greg had been on Hallworth and Gray's board for 12 years, longer than most CEOs survived the rotation. We weren't friends exactly, but we spoke the same language. He liked results. I liked building them. When the firm started leaning into narrative-led growth and brand dynamism, Greg went quiet. He watched, measured. Now he was reaching out, which meant the numbers were finally speaking louder than Chase's hashtags. The club was all mahogany and hushed echoes. I arrived 10 minutes early, like I always did when power was about to shift. Greg was already at the table, sipping something brown and expensive. He didn't stand, just looked up, gave a slight nod, and motioned to the seat across from him. "I heard you've been busy," he said. "I've been working," I replied. A waiter appeared, took our orders. Medium rare ribeye for both. No salad, no nonsense. Greg liked his meals like his partnerships, substantial and hard to fake. "You've seen the Q2 numbers?" he asked. "I have." "PR says client transition phase. I say hemorrhage." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He swirled his glass. "What do you think they're missing?" I reached into my coat pocket and slid a small black USB drive across the table. "Everything." He looked at it like it was a detonator. "This what I think it is?" "It's the legacy file." Greg's eyebrow lifted, slight, calculated. "For years, I kept notes," I said. "Not just KPIs and targets, systems, behavioral patterns, crisis response frameworks, sector timing, client psychographics, all the things Chase's dashboards can't model. You remember the transportation pivot in 2015? You saved us $750,000. That wasn't luck. That was sequence." I let the silence hang there. "The file has 12 modules," I continued, each one built off a decade of internal case studies. Not theory, not trend decks, just data and how to use it. Greg set his glass down. "You sure you want to show this to me?" "I'm not showing it," I said. "I'm offering it." He leaned back, studying me. "Why now?" "Because your quarterly trend isn't a dip, it's a direction. And in 12 months, Hallworth becomes a target. You know that. I know that. And Chase doesn't even see it coming." Greg nodded slowly. "He's loud, but he's not stupid." "No, he's not. But he's still green. He sees branding as currency. He thinks attention is trust. That only works when the money's still easy, the market's tightening. The clients are scared again. And scared clients don't want fireworks. They want a lighthouse." Greg exhaled, long, measured. "So," he said, "what do you want?" Not my job back, not a public apology, not a handshake and a press release saying, "Welcome home." I looked him dead in the eye. "I want a licensing structure, my own consultancy, independently held. I'll clean up the mess, stabilize the accounts, rebuild client architecture, but it's under my name. I own the IP. I name the terms." Greg smiled, just barely. "Bold." "No," I said. "Precise." The stakes arrived. We didn't talk business for a while. Just ate, like two men who'd seen enough boardroom theatrics to know when to shut up and chew. When the plates were cleared, Greg tapped the USB drive once with his index finger. "Can I keep this?" "You can copy it," I said, "but I keep the original." He laughed, a real laugh. "You always knew how to play the long game." I didn't answer. I just reached for my coat. "Give me a week," he said. "I'll call when the board is ready." Outside, the city hummed. Lights everywhere, but no warmth, just shine. I walked 3 blocks before I stopped under an old office building I used to walk past every morning before Hallworth moved downtown. There was a brass plaque by the door, faded, solid, reliable. That's what I was, not legacy in the way they meant it, expired, dusty, redundant. Legacy like foundation, the kind that doesn't move when the market does. They thought I was a relic, but I wasn't. I was the scaffolding, the silent structure behind the brand. And now, if I was going to teach them how to survive, I'd do it under my name, not theirs. The terms came by encrypted email. Subject line, proposal for strategic reintegration. I opened it, 6-figure retainer, performance-based equity, full autonomy over client architecture, no mention of title, no desk, no hierarchy, just results. But I didn't say yes, not immediately. I sent back one condition, 9 words long. The head of digital innovation steps aside, non-negotiable. No follow-up, no explanation. I waited. It took them 3 days. Then came the reply, agreed. That's when I knew the damage was worse than they let on. The following Monday, I walked back into Hallworth and Gray's headquarters for the first time in nearly 2 months. I didn't wear a suit. I wore exactly what I wore the day I packed my box, black button-down, clean slacks, no tie. My name wasn't on the employee roster anymore, but the security guard stood when I walked in. He didn't ask for ID. In the elevator, I pressed the button for the 20th floor, strategic development, my old floor. The floor I helped design during the last expansion. The doors opened, I paused. It wasn't mine anymore, not an appearance. The long conference table was gone, replaced by beanbags, faux grass rugs, and a light installation on the ceiling that pulsed to lo-fi music. My office, once lined with bookshelves and maps, was now framed by a neon sign that read, "Grind and Shine." There were ring lights, a content corner, framed hashtags on the wall. I didn't flinch. The digital guru, Chase, wasn't there. He'd been reassigned over the weekend. Special projects, according to the board, which meant boxed, labeled, and placed on a shelf until further notice. The new staff didn't know what to make of me. Some glanced up and froze. Others looked relieved. A few couldn't meet my eyes. I said nothing. I stepped into the open work area, unbuttoned my cuff, and set my folder on the table. Then I started calling names. Maria, Jacob, Tony, let's meet in 10. Bring your Q3 projections and all client touch points from July through September. They moved. Quickly, I walked to the whiteboard and wiped it clean, erasing weeks of pseudo-philosophical quotes and marketing jargon. I drew a circle, then a triangle, then a grid. Velocity mapping, I said as they filed in. Client mood, contract fragility, internal load, 3 axes. If we don't quantify friction, we can't predict churn. No one argued. They took notes. I kept speaking. In less than 40 minutes, we had a full-tier outline of high-risk accounts. Not feelings, not narratives, just impact. After the meeting, I moved from desk to desk, not micromanaging, aligning. I watched how they worked, corrected gently where needed, asked questions, made eye contact. I wasn't rebuilding culture. I was building tempo. In my old office, the one with the neon sign, I didn't change a thing. I didn't sit. I didn't touch the desk. I just stood in the doorway and looked around. Let them keep the lights. I kept the logic. Later, I ran into Evan, the CEO, outside the break room. He was holding a paper cup and scrolling something on his phone. When he looked up and saw me, his smile tried to form, but his eyes faltered. He nodded and muttered, "Glad to have you back in the building." I didn't nod back. I didn't say anything at all. I didn't need to. The buyback clause wasn't about money. It was about control, about precision. They hadn't just lost clients, they'd lost calibration. My systems had held this place together like unseen gears in a clock. They had underestimated the silence between ticks. The most satisfying part wasn't Chase being pushed aside. It wasn't Evan looking away like a boy caught copying his homework. It was the numbers, clean, stable, rising again. I wasn't chasing old glory. I wasn't interested in legacy. I was here because I'd built something worth preserving, and I'd be damned if it was going to be destroyed by someone who thought leadership came with filters and sponsored posts. This wasn't revenge. This was velocity. They wanted flash. I brought function. They wanted spectacle. I delivered structure. And now, they gave me runway. By the time I left that day, I'd outlined a full client reclamation protocol, assigned 3 account pivots, drafted a new reporting model. The interns were taking notes in silence. The senior managers were watching closely. No applause, just movement. As I stepped into the elevator that evening, I looked once more at the 20-year-old company name engraved on the glass wall behind reception. Let them keep it. I was building something of my own now, something leaner, smarter, built from the shadows they'd mistaken for absence. I didn't need to return. I needed to outpace. The coffee maker clicks off behind me, automatic shutoff, like clockwork. I pour the last cup, and walk it to the rooftop terrace just as the first edge of sunlight cuts over the skyline. The air is crisp, clean. No traffic yet, no emails, just light and space. 6 months ago, this building was a furniture warehouse. Now, it's my firm's headquarters. 3 floors, no excess, just what we need, what works. The nameplate at the entrance doesn't carry legacy initials or clever branding. It's simple. Director, my name. Because this time, there's no one left to misinterpret it. Inside, the space is open, purposefully so. No beanbags, no neon signs, just desks, quiet hum of work. Analysts I handpicked for discipline, not likes. Project leads who ask questions instead of waiting for applause. It's not sexy, but it's solid, and that's the point. Clients didn't follow me for flair. They followed me because when the market trembled, I didn't. They remembered who called the shots when things got ugly, who gave them breathing room, stability. They remembered that when trend-chasing firms panicked, I planned. Hallworth still exists, technically. They're quieter now, slower. Most of the old leadership is gone, evaporated under pressure or reassigned. They still put out press releases, still chase headlines. But they license my framework now. Ironically, they pay quarterly to use the very architecture they once dismissed as outdated. I didn't ask for that deal. They came to me. The framework started as a spreadsheet, a survival tool. Now it's the spine of every strategy document we send out. Modular, adaptive, logical, built to flex without breaking. Clients don't just adopt it, they build around it, which means they build around me. There's power in that. Quiet power. The kind you don't have to raise your voice to wield. A knock comes at the glass door. It's Marcus, one of our younger analysts. Smart kid, fast processor, background in behavioral economics, but with a tendency to overthink. Didn't think anyone else was up yet, he says. Old habits, I say, sipping. He steps out onto the roof, glancing at the city with the cautious optimism of someone still building their place in it. Then he turns to me. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you miss it? The old place? I smile, not bitter, not smug, just still. No, I say. They're still chasing trends. I'm building foundations. He nods, but I can see the curiosity still flickering behind his eyes. He hasn't been burned yet. That will come, and when it does, he'll understand. That relevance fades, but rhythm endures. I motion toward the skyline. You know why I picked this building? Cheaper rent? I shake my head. Line of sight. To what? To everything they can't see. He doesn't fully get it, not yet, but he will. I used to think teaching was about giving answers. Now I know it's about pointing to patterns and letting people find the rhythm on their own. Marcus nods once more, quietly, then steps back inside. I stay. The light has shifted now, shadows retreating, the city waking. Somewhere, someone's preparing a deck filled with buzzwords. Someone else is pitching a rebrand to mask underperformance. But not here. Not in this building. Here, we're planning. There's a whiteboard downstairs with our upcoming targets. Nothing flashy, no launch parties, just market recalibration models and a list of client pain points we're solving one at a time. We work quietly, but we're being heard. Last week, a client told me our last deliverable felt dangerously simple. That was the compliment of the year. It meant we cut through the noise. I sipped the last of my coffee. It's gone lukewarm, but I don't mind. What I built here isn't revenge. It's a rhythm, a structure, a method that doesn't crumble under disruption. It absorbs it. The truth is, I was never the showman, never the headline. I was the scaffolding, the grid underneath, and I like it that way. They said I was too traditional, but they forgot. Traditions survive because they work. And I wasn't the past. I was the framework.